Hello, good morning, good evening, depending where you're joining us from. Thank you very much for taking your time. Really appreciate it. My name is Kai. I'm product specialist for Qodana, and I will be your host today. Just as per tradition, we start with a couple of housekeeping items. So the first one is this session is being recorded and will be made available on YouTube afterwards. We will also make the URL available through our newsletters and other channels. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat, and we will try to answer as we go along. I am joined today by my colleague, Alex. Alex, do you want to say hi?
Hi, my name is Alex Costa, and I am a solutions engineer here at Qodana. I'll be helping Kai facilitate any questions, as well as I'll be one of the people you'll be talking to if you decide to take Qodana for a demo or POC. But it's nice to be here, and Kai, good luck.
Thank you. Also joining us in the chat will be Radmir Bambitov, who is leading our support, as well as Kelly Bethke, who is our community manager. So please feel free. We will make stops at regular intervals to see if there are any questions. Ask away. Also, thanks for joining, and please also subscribe to our channel. So there are many more screencasts available on the JetBrains YouTube channel. Not only about Qodana, but about basically all the good stuff that we do. Last but not least, before we go into it, please also share your feedback using this link or using this QR code. I will stop for a second now, and I will also share this later on again. Now about the agenda, and my apologies, my PowerPoint is doing some weird things today. That's why this is a little bit squashed. But we will start with a quick foray into what Qodana actually is and what kind of challenges it addresses. Then we will make a detour into Qodana and AI, followed by a Qodana demo. And if we have time, some best practices and also a Q&A. So we should have ample time at the end to really go into the details. Qodana, what is it? if you haven't heard about it, it's still relatively young, although we are on the market now for about 2 years. And basically, what JetBrains decided was we took the linters, so the analysis engines, with our leading quality, and made them available in headless mode so that you can use them as a static analysis tool as part of your CI pipeline. We wanted to, with that, to address a couple of different challenges, and also to give you some perspective. If you follow us for some time or if you are new, basically we started first with the developer in mind. So we tried and we made Qodana as best as possible and as easy to be used as possible by a developer. However, we are now also adding much needed functionality to be able to use Qodana in a more enterprise context. And here, just to break it down, we basically had a look and thought about some high-level challenges depending on your role in a development organization. So as a manager, for example, you need an easy overview about what's going on in terms of code quality in your project. Obviously, it needs to fit into the budget. It must not affect time to market. No question how to deal with AI, obviously, is on anybody's mind, not only managers, but basically everyone. And also, does it actually produce an ROI? And we have by now features basically to address all of these issues and topics. And for a DevOps, DevX, site reliability engineer point of view, you want it to be easy to integrate. You don't want to spend too much time with configuration. So meaning you want to have the configuration as flexible and as intuitive as possible. And the more you can cover with the one tool, the better, is obviously that will cut down on maintenance, configuration issues, as well as licensing. And then last but not least, for a developer, understandably, a developer does not want to be forced to do a context switch. The tool is not supposed to slow a developer down, although quite frankly, static analysis tool will always slow a little bit down, but we developed Qodana with the intention in mind to spend maybe a few moments here and there with static analysis, but that will save a lot of time later on, so that overall, if you have a look at a task to be completed, then it definitely will not slow you down. You don't want to be swamped with false positives, understandably, and the tool ideally should help me as a developer instead of being an obstacle that I need to overcome in my daily work. So that's why we have Qodana not only as a static analysis tool, that is coming back to, we want to give you a solution that covers as much as possible instead of using individual tools. So that means that Qodana, first and foremost, is a static analysis tool. So to find issues, minor problems, things like psychometric complexity, code coverage, and much more in your code. But it also performs a license audit, meaning that it will show you if the licenses of your dependencies are compliant with your project license. And we also perform a vulnerability check in the sense of that we will check dependencies, third-party packages for any known vulnerabilities. And we do that in collaboration with ment.io. Compatibility. So we really wanted to focus on the most used languages that are around. So we had a look, and probably around 80% of our projects are usually done with one of the languages that we do cover. So from Java, Kotlin, PHP, C, C++, most modern languages that are around, you will find to be covered by Qodana. And we also want to make Qodana as easily as possible to be integrated into your CI pipeline. And here you can see we have ready-made integrations for the most common ones. But even if you use something a little bit more exotic, there's always our CLI tool available that you can utilize to integrate Qodana as well. So as I said earlier, we were already in a pretty good state going into this year when it came to features that were mostly geared towards developers. However, we saw that there was a distinct gap to if you wanted to use Qodana in a more enterprise context. And the four main features that we released were SSO support. So Qodana will now support your SSO provider. We also have a project creation API, meaning that Qodana can automatically create projects for you by basically looking into your VCS and then setting up projects automatically, which will help if you are to migrate, for example, from another tool, or if you have many different projects and you do not want, understandably, set them up manually. Very important, and I will show that later, is a new dashboard called Insights. And Insights is used to be able to aggregate data and results across different projects and across different teams. So this is, for example, used by higher management if they want to see kind of an overall state about the quality of their software projects. But you can also drill down to filter for what you're most interested in. And super exciting, we now also have a self-hosted version that is based on Docker with Kubernetes and Helm-charts as orchestration tool, so that if you are in a sensible environment, you can use Qodana now also fully within your own environment. We are not finished though, not by a long shot. So coming fairly soon. So this year, for example, we are still most likely to release a new feature called Global Project Configuration. And this is another feature geared towards Qodana to be used in enterprises. So with Global Project Configuration, you have an easy way, for example, if you want to set and enforce standard configuration profiles across your teams. But you also have the freedom to then really fine tune that depending on the team and on the project. So this will make configuration much easier if you want to use Qodana in a large scale context. We are also working on improving our SAST security analysis offering. So we already have SAST security analysis for Java and Kotlin and PHP. However, for Java and Kotlin, this currently only works in IntelliJ, and we are working on bringing this to more languages and to more ways to work with the results as well. And we are going to do this most likely with some collaboration. We are also working on an AI security agent. So because we saw that when it came to quality, to scanning and analyzing code for code quality issues, the current heuristic-based analysis is still ahead of AI. However, when it comes to scanning for potential security vulnerabilities, there we see that AI made quite a big progress, and we are looking into integrating that into Qodana as well. We will also provide you with an integration into issue tracking program software like Jira, for example, via our API. That is actually a very often requested feature, and we are also adding a lot of improvements into insights. For example, we will make the data extractable via the API, and we will also give you more ways to have ready-made levels of data aggregation and reporting. Now, just a quick question to Alex. Are there any questions yet?
Nope, not currently.
Right, thank you. Then the next topic. So again, we spoke about what Qodana is and what it is used for. So this is static analysis tool with added license audit and SAC, so SCA, software component analysis on top, to be able to be integrated into your CI workflow. But the elephant in the room, I also wanted to relatively briefly touch on static analysis in general and Qodana in particular in the context of the usage with AI-generated code. So you can see this, and this is obviously very condensed, but the typical development workflow so far was you usually work with an existing code base in your IDE, and then you added dependencies. You had a look if you could reuse some code. For example, you refactored while you were going along and adding new code. And then once you wanted to push, you would have then Qodana as a quality gate so that you can be sure that the code is clean before you merge it, before it gets built. Now, with AI on top, you see you would still obviously do work in your IDE, but you also now have quite often the option to use AI-generated code, if it is via an AI assistant or if it is via an agent. Regardless what you use, it poses certain challenges, at least right now, and what we see and what studies show. So, for example, dependencies is a topic. So AI code generators are known for pulling in dependencies with known vulnerabilities. So dependencies that you as a developer might have spotted while doing programming manually. However, with AI-generated code, it can be very easy to have these vulnerable dependencies slip through the cracks. Also, we saw that code duplication is going up rapidly. So AI is really good in solving a task really quick, but it does not necessarily does that with long-term implications in mind. So if it is possible and if it is easy to do, AI-generated code tends to use a lot of code duplication. Similar with refactoring. AI, if you do not specifically ask it to do, is not really a big fan, apparently, of refactoring code. And all that combined can lead to code rot. So that does mean that it's not only the new code that gets implemented is not good and has quality issues, but that you will also have issues with your existing code base by introducing new problems into it. The good news here is those are issues that will as well be catched by Qodana. So what I'm driving at with this is that static analysis can be used as basically the last line of defense for both manually but also AI generated code. So there are different topics to look out for. But overall, the good news is, for example, when it comes to code duplication, that is something that Qodana will help you with. When it comes to vulnerable dependencies, Qodana will find those. And overall, if there are certain standards that are not adhered to, Qodana will catch those as well. So meaning that AI obviously is a very powerful tool and a very useful tool. However, with a lot of power comes great responsibility. So you really need to, if you want to use AI in a larger scale, and if you want to use it safely, you really need to put it on a tight leash and to guide it towards where you want, what you want it to do, and where you want it to go. And here, Qodana can definitely help you with that. So the next question would be, okay, this analysis stuff, I could just as well do that with AI as well, couldn't I? And to a certain extent, that is a very valid question. However, here again, and that is at least the current state, if you compare heuristic-based tools like Qodana with AI-based tools, both really have their pros and cons. So if you have a look at heuristic-based tools, accuracy is a big point. So heuristic-based tools are still more precise. Then explainability is much higher. So that with heuristic-based static analysis, you will basically see why you got a result from an inspection because you have a one-to-one relationship with that. Whereas if you get results from an AI-related tool, it tends to be a black box. So you must rely on that it actually makes sense what it shows you. And also, and you might have made this experience yourself, if you ask AI to perform the same task 3 times, it will give you 6 different ways how to actually do this, which is not great, again, if you create a lot of code with it, because that creates a lot of uncertainty. And here again, with heuristic-based tools, you do not have that issue. Last but not least, performance. Heuristic-based tools are still, depending on the use case, much faster than AI-based analysis tools. Which apparently in a modern SDLC process is really, really important, because coming back to the initial challenges that we spoke about, time to market, not slowing down, those are all very important issues. However, AI-based tools also have their advantages, for example, when it comes to better generalization. And another way to look at it is that obviously a heuristic-based tool does not understand the intent of your code. So, and that is something that where AI can definitely help, because you can train it and let it know what your code is supposed to do. Meaning, for example, AI can help you to find more logic-related issues, whereas heuristic-based tools would struggle with that. Also, refactoring semantic bugs. Again, if you do not tell it to do it, it might be an issue, but overall, if you see that there is an issue or there is a piece of code that is not up to scratch, you can have AI-based tools to help you to alleviate this dodgy piece of code. The good news here is that, especially with JetBrains, you really can have the best of both worlds. So you can have state-of-the-art heuristic-based tools with Qodana, but you can also very easily integrate this into a tool chain where you, for example, use Juni as a coding agent or our AI assistant in the IDE. So now that I was going on about how much better heuristic-based analysis is, I wanted to add we are constantly looking into where AI can be of help. So, because obviously we are at the very beginning of this implementation of AI technology. So we are constantly looking first when it comes to the analysis. Is it still not as well in terms of results as heuristic-based tools? But we are also going to implement AI where we think where it definitely does make sense. It's still under wraps, but here, please look out. We will make some announcements about some new features and some new methodologies coming really soon. And that was the first part. So that was the dry bit with with a lot of slides. So I would wanted to ask before we go to the demo, Alex, if there are any questions.
Kai, no, there are currently no questions.
Right, thank you.
Mhm.
Then one more slide, I promise, and then I will go to Qodana itself. So to give you a little bit of context and to set the stage. So Qodana basically consists of three different components. You have the IDE plugin. By the way, that works with our IDEs, but also works with Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio. Then you have the analysis engine, which sits on your CI server. So that means even if you call it a cloud version, in reality, it's more of a hybrid version, as the analysis will always take place within your own environment. So a typical workflow looks like you're in the IDE, you do a pull request, then that would kick off a scan by Qodana of your code as an additional part of your pipeline. And once that scan and the analysis is finished, Qodana will create a SARIF file. SARIF is a standard format to exchange static analysis files, to exchange static analysis results, and will push that into a cloud-based dashboard. And from there, it will also synchronize the results back with the IDE plugin as well. So a couple of points that I wanted to point out here is one, again, even though it's a cloud-based, we have a cloud-based version, we will never take your full code and push that into the cloud, but we will always only push the analysis results in the form of small code snippets. And a second point is that depending on your interest in the data and in the analysis results, you have multiple different ways how you want to work with them. So for example, if you're a developer, you can stay in the IDE as you get everything in the plugin. But if you're a team lead, for example, or a DevEx person, you can go to the centralized dashboard and review the results from there. That said, I will now go to Qodana itself to give you a walkthrough. And what you see right now, this is the new Insights dashboard. So here, for example, you have a total of 33 projects. 8 scans were performed recently. You have a nice graph to see where it goes. Hopefully it should go down and not look like my demo environment and only go up. You can also track code coverage if it is enabled, and you also see if you have what your license audit pass rate is. You can set different filters. So for example, you can set filters per team or per project, and that is really up to you how you want to slice this data. So if I, for example, just go to one project that I want to look at, you apply a filter, and then it shows you only the problems for that particular project. And then you have even more filters. So for example, if you just want to look for critical issues or high issues, if you want to include a baseline or if you want to exclude the baseline and so on, that you can do from here. And once you're happy with your selection, you can also then go and create a permanent link. And if you do that, so for example, if you want to share this, or you want to come back to this set of filters, you can use the URL to make this happen. However, we are also going to implement some additional ways to actually pre-select these filters, because we want to give you the opportunity to have multiple layers in here. So for example, that you can define a set of filters. For example, I want to have this 3 projects from this particular team, and you can combine this into one item, and then you can add, for example, another set of projects as another item. So to really give you this flexibility to recreate your internal structure as best as possible. You also have different ways to actually go and sort this data so that you can really quickly see what you're most interested in. And from here, obviously, you can go directly to the individual project. For example, if you want to have a look into more details. However, before I go into here, I want to take one step back and show you the so-called organizational view. So this is a view, for example, a team lead might be interested in, who's working with different teams. Because here you can see all the different teams that are using Qodana in this particular organization. And what's important here to notice, what a team is really up to you to define. So it's not something that we define, but here again, you can really create it in a way that it best reflects your internal org structure. I also quickly want to go into the settings and again show that you can set up the SSO from here now as well. So that is very handy. And we are happy to go into more details if you are so interested later in the Q&A. You can also define who is going to be able to see what. So for example, if you have a team of developers in your Java team, then you can give those developers only access to the results that are under the Java team. So this is very flexible. You can also say I have a senior developer, and that senior developer should have access to multiple projects. Then that obviously is also no problem. And here again, to make it as easy as possible, basically to reflect your internal org structure. But now let's go back to the projects. So this is how it looks like if you go into an individual team. Here you can see those are all the projects that are part of that individual team. And here, like with what a team is up to you to define. It's also which projects you want to have included in that team. That is absolutely up for you to define as well. Important side note, again, I briefly mentioned that if you have loads and loads of projects, you do not need to set that up manually, but you can have our API look into your VCS, and then Qodana will create these projects automatically for you. So you can see the first bits of information. So you can see the number of problems, the weighing by severity. You can see code coverage, and you can see if the license audit was passed or not. If we go back into this stream project that I showed earlier, to walk you through the components here. So you have the scan history. So that means it's not super impressive here, as this is fairly flat, but here you would see these bars go up or down so that you have a quick look on how the trends looks like. And what's important to note here is that it does not only keep the amount of issues and the type, but it will also always keep the full issue context as well. So that, for example, if an older version of a project is giving you grief, you can always go back to the relevant scan in Qodana, and you can try to replicate that issue from there. Then here you have a couple of different tabs. Usually I enlarged this, so I zoomed a little bit in. Normally they are next to each other, but you have the actual problems tab. That does what it says on the tin. So here you will see the new problems that a scan will produce. And then the next, you have the baseline. And I want to spend a few moments here to explain the differences. So let's say you onboard a new project and you do a scan for the first time. And there are different schools of thought about this, but what you would typically do, in my opinion, is you would first have a look if there's anything critical lurking in your code. So those bits, like, for example, vulnerability declared dependencies, you might want to fix straight away. But let's just say there's nothing that requires immediate attention. So what you would do is you would take those problems and move them into the baseline. And that enables you to do a couple of different things. So one is that you can then go and set a quality gate as part of your CI pipeline. And the second thing is it will also make it much easier to work with new problems. So let's say you did this, you moved everything into a baseline, you set a quality gate, and you can configure the quality gate by different criteria. So for example, by severity, you can set different numbers of allowed issues. You can also include code coverage. But just for the sake of the argument, even though it's not what you should typically do in real life is, but for the sake of the argument, you set that quality gate to 0 new issues allowed. And you do the next scan with Qodana, and Qodana finds 5 new issues. Then first what will happen is the quality gate will let the build fail and will show only the 5 new issues in the actual problems tab. So that it is very easy to see where, as a developer, you need to focus your time. And this will also filter through into your IDE plugin. So in the IDE plugin, you will only see these 5 new issues if you so decide. So again, makes it really easy that you do not get overwhelmed by this amount of issues. But that comes back to, we want to show the developer that this is actually a help and not a burden. Qodana also automatically create quick fixes. This does not work for everything, quite frankly. So, for example, logic-related issue, Qodana wouldn't know what to do with. But for a lot of run-of-the-mill issues, Qodana will create quick fixes. And there are different ways to have them applied depending on your strategy. So that in an ideal scenario, coming back to these 5 new issues, 3 of those 5 issues are fixed by Qodana automatically. And then you only need to spend a couple of minutes on the 2 more complex related issues. Maybe even use our AI assistant or Juni to have them fixed, so that you only spend a few moments to be sure that your code is clean. So, and then you do the next push, no new issues, and Qodana will let this pass and be merged into your main code. By the way, also, this one only has 1 branch, but obviously you can also have multiple branches separate with Qodana. So let's push those back, otherwise I don't have much to show. Then configuration. So configuration has 2 aspects to it. So one is just simply what set of inspections do you want to enable for this particular project in Qodana? Because there are thousands of inspections available. So what you would typically do is we have a starter profile, so you take that, and then you can fine tune that as you go along. So you can, for example, say, okay, there's a lot of noise I'm not really interested in, so I disable those inspections, but other stuff is missing, so I will enable those inspections. And this will make it as relevant as possible for your individual project as you go along. And the way you can do that is you can either use the AI, the UI, which quite frankly, probably only a minority of our users is using, because all that does is this will manipulate the YAML file. So that would be the second way to set a configuration profile. You can just manipulate the YAML file directly. Or the third way is you can use, for example, your IntelliJ IDE and use the editor there, and that will also give you a YAML file. And regardless how you derive that YAML file, you put that into your project root, and that way Qodana knows which inspections it's supposed to pull. And that's very important if you want to achieve a standardized approach across your team in terms of code quality. So because that's everyone basically who's working on this project will use the same inspections with Qodana. Then there's a second aspect in terms of configuration, and that is how Qodana behaves. So how you want Qodana to behave and what you want it to do. So for example, this automated fixes cleanup strategy is one point. Those are all things that you will also put into the YAML file. And again, that makes it very flexible to use and also very intuitive for a developer to use. But here, if you have any questions, because in larger context, it can become quite complex, and we are always happy to help with advice how to do that and how to use those configuration files. And last but not least, the license audit. Here you can see an example. This is the project license, and Qodana figured that out by himself from looking into the license file. And then it will check for the dependency tree and then show you if there are any, which dependencies are used, what kind of licenses or license that dependency has, and if that license is compliant or not. And this is something that in the daily task, a developer probably isn't super interested, and team lead development probably also not super interested in the day-to-day work. However, that can become quite important to track. For example, if you get asked by a customer to show you that you are compliant, but it will also help to avoid any potential legal liabilities if you can prove that you're clean with your dependencies. And how can you prove that? You can actually go and create an SBOM, so a software bill of materials, from here as well. Going back, if you have a project, and a slightly larger project, and you have only 322 problems, that is a great job. So intrinsic into these kind of analysis tools is that the large projects can give you a lot of issues in the first scan. So easily a couple of thousand, depending on the size of a project. I think Alex mentioned that his record so far was over 400,000 issues. So meaning you need to have a really quick way to go and filter down into what you are interested in. And you can do this either by setting these high-level criteria here on the side, and then go further down into the different categories and types that you're interested in. And by the way, that also works just as well for the baseline. So if these issues in the baseline, you can do this as well. So for example, if your strategy is to regularly review the technical debt that is in the baseline, that makes it really easy to figure out where you want to put your emphasis on in dealing with your technical debt in the baseline. But let's just pull one random example. So I think I selected this one here earlier. This is the way that you will see an issue in the dashboard. So you will see the line that an error was found, and then depending on the context, a couple of lines above and below. You will also almost always see an explanation of that issue. So that's very handy. And we have, for example, this is a tool that's also used in a university context. So this is really nice if you, for example, want to train more junior developers so that you always understand what is actually going on. And to make it easier to collaborate, you can also copy a link. So for example, you're a senior developer and you want to have one of you guys have a look at, or the other way around. You can copy that link, then share that link, and that will bring your colleague directly to that issue that you just reviewed as well. You can also, if you say this is not super interesting for us, you can exclude, for example, a path, or you can exclude a file, or you can exclude an inspection directly from here. Again, just to make it very easy so that you do not have to go to lots of different places to do this. But apparently you wouldn't be able to actually fix this issue from here. So let's say you have reviewed this and you want to go ahead and fix that issue. You have different ways. By the way, here an example works just as well as Visual Studio Code, but obviously we would highly recommend using IntelliJ. So if you click on here, that will bring you directly to that issue that you just reviewed in your IDE. So meaning you do not have to make a note of that issue of the file, the line and so on, but you can jump directly to this issue and then go and fix it from here in whatever way works best for you in that moment, in that context. What's important to note is that especially if you use our IDEs, as they are built on the same base, the results that you will see in Qodana and the results that you will see in the onboard analysis, for example, in IntelliJ, that these results are consistent. So naming is the same. What kind of issues are looked for are the same, meaning it's very intuitive to use. So it's not like with third-party plugins that you first have to figure out, is that the same issue or is that something else or what's actually going on? Here, you do not have that worry as everything is matched. And you will also have the vulnerable dependencies in here, for example, so that you can see, okay, this is what Qodana found, this is the CVE, the version you should ideally upgrade to, so that you have all the information that you need to be able to work with this. Fairly often asked question is, okay, but what is it? Because my project is special, so I need some custom inspection times to really have Qodana help me with the stuff that are most important to me, and that is really easy to do in Qodana. So you can, in IntelliJ, we have a functionality called Flex Inspect. From here, you can see a folder of code inspections, new Qodana inspections, and then you can select if you want to have a template or if you want to go directly, so that, again, it's very intuitive, very easy to go and implement these inspections. And once you have written that inspection and implemented it in Qodana, it will be picked up by, for all intents and purposes, like every other standard inspection as well. Last but not least, what I wanted to show you, to see there are a couple of questions, so we will get to them in a moment, is the security analysis. So this is, those are results from a taint analysis that works actually locally in your IDE. And the taint analysis will help you to find more complex security-related issues, for example, like an SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and so on. So you can look for those directly before you actually push the code by performing that scan locally. And you can see, you can follow this by going through this taint track from the source down to the sink, so that you can understand directly what's going on and what you need to do to fix this security issue. Again, currently works for Java and Kotlin. For PHP, we have something similar, but that is on the dashboard. But we are going to improve this going further along as well. And one more thing, and then I'm basically finished, is, again, especially with AI-generated code. So one important point is you can also have Qodana run locally as well. So let's say you write a piece of code, or you have Juni create a piece of code for you, or the AI assistant, and you want to be sure that that is clean before you push it somewhere. You can just try Qodana locally, and in our IDEs, it's already integrated. For Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, you can download a very easy plugin. and this will run and give you a similar set of results as the scan on the CI server does give you as well. I hope it will take now a few moments. Ta-da, but you could see how fast that was, and you can even utilize a similar looking report on a local host in the browser as well, so that you can really be sure that you do not run into any weird surprises once you push the code. And with that said, before I go back to my presentation, Alex, you said you have some questions.
Yeah, Kai. Yeah, I got quite a few. So, first up on the bat is it possible to determine trends for individual projects from the Insights report and understand how they changed relative to each other?
I don't think that it is possible yet. I might stand corrected, but I mean, you can kind of do that by setting different sets of filters and then having them side by side. That could be a way, but Insights wouldn't directly give you a like-for-like comparison within the report. So the way I understand is, Ivan, that you're looking for having project A and how it trends, and having project B and how it trends, and then kind of have a comparison between the two. It's a really good idea, though. So thank you for that, Ivan.
Right, next up, we have is it only available in cloud or can I run in my own stack?
Yes, there are separate ways. So then we have a self-hosted solution as well that you can just run completely in your own environment. But for example, if you just want to have a quick look, what I just showed, if you use it locally in your IDE, that will also just download a couple of Docker containers and then run locally on your machine.
And we also have how does Qodana compare to other tools in the market? I won't name them, promise. What sets Qodana apart?
It's a very wide question that I would be happy to go into details, maybe offline. But so and I'm fairly sure I know what you're aiming at. The main incumbent is a good tool, but for example, when it comes to configuration, so YAML files is a feedback that we get that it's much more intuitive and flexible to use. Also, the IDE plugin seems to perform much better and is much gets very good feedback from developers. But overall, there's not this one big thing besides being a JetBrains tool and really nicely integrated into the JetBrains tool chain, but a lot of smaller bits and pieces that, depending on your individual setup, might make it the better tool for your choice. But again, I'm happy to follow up with you offline, and we can go into that, because I'm fairly sure I know the tool that you have in mind quite well.
We also have, you mentioned Qodana generates a serif file after scan. Can it diff between issues in new code versus pre-existing tech debt and configure quality gates to block merges only for newly introduced issues?
Yes, that would be the short answer. No, but you can definitely, that's the big thing about using the baseline, that it will see what are new issues and what are pre-existing issues, so that you can set the quality good only for new issues. Yeah.
So, and then we have, does Qodana implement any specific static analysis that differentiates from our competitors? Clearly, oversight of multiple projects is a neat feature.
Thank you, Mark. This is also a very wide topic, which can mean a lot of different things. So it really depends. So let's take a step back. It really depends. If you have a look at SNUG, SNUG is much more geared towards security usually. So it helps you to a certain extent when it comes to code quality, so bugs, runtime issues, and the likes. And then you have SonarQube, which is fairly comparable to Qodana. What we currently do not do is we do not look for specific static analysis things like ISO 26262 or AUTOSAR or MISRA or something like that. For those kind of requirements, there are specific tools available like QSC or Clockwork or Polyspaces, things like that. Then if we do one step further, the inspections themselves or what the tools are actually looking for is relatively similar, SonarQube and Qodana. However, where there's a difference, I think, is the license audit. I'm not sure if SonarQube does offer that yet. And the SCA part, although I think SonarQube does has that now with advanced security as well. But it's a really hard point. It's a really hard topic to compare because there is no specific industry standard to say this is industry standard for inspections because they're so different. So there is a rule in SonarQube can be named differently from inspection in Qodana, for example, and then SNUC can take one inspection in SonarQube, so one inspection in Qodana or a rule in SonarQube and breaks that up into 3 separate inspections. So long story short, it's again very wide topic, but we would be happy to go into detail there with you because it would be really difficult to explain in just 3 minutes on the call. But good question. Thank you for that, Mark.
These are all great questions. All right. We also have, can I create custom analysis check and fail pull request if there are such issues?
Yes, you can. I know the person who developed that feature, and he made a really good job in doing that. So yeah, you can create a custom check and then have the pull request fail based on a quality gate.
So, then Mark also asked, is Qodana integrated with IntelliJ or a plugin?
Yes. So in IntelliJ, it's already baked in. So if you go to IntelliJ into tools, you should already see Qodana pop up.
Then we have, can teams define custom license policies to automatically block problematic licenses like GPL or CI, or does compliance require manual dashboard review?
Yes and no. So you can configure the license audit to best reflect what you wanted to do, and then also have the quality gate fail based on that. However, where we're working on, and that is one improvement that's going to be implemented soon, is if you have custom dependencies without any license type in them, because that will basically automatically fail because Qodana doesn't know what to do with those. But overall, the answer would be yes.
Awesome. And that is it for the questions in the chat.
Cool. So we have 7 minutes left. Just before I go to the next bit, no more questions going in. Then I will go back to my presentation because I also wanted to give you an example. So Every is one of the big 3 parcel delivery companies in the UK. So it used to be part of Hermes for our German listeners, and they actually replaced SonarQube with Qodana, and for several different reasons. So one aspect that the guys really liked was the configuration via YAML file. So that made it really, really flexible to use. Then the improved project overview. So it's really easy to work with results due to the dashboard and to the sunburst diagram. The immediate feedback was appreciated to have that in the CI, but and in the IDE, and that overall led to a significant decrease in time that was spent on working with that tool. So you can see Qodana helped to shorten time to release, and is 6 times faster code analysis. So meaning that it's not only in theory that we might have some advantages, but we also have actually examples where we can show that. Another example, which I cannot put on here because it's I can only give you a very high level example, is that a very large customer of ours with over 1,200 developers, they are working on a big Spring Boot update, and they use Qodana almost exclusively because of the quick fix functionality. So for them, it makes sense to use Qodana because the quick fix functionality is so powerful that it really makes their life much easier compared to other tools. Then also, maybe as a little goodie, and that is a JetBrains thing. So if you move from a comparable commercial product over to Qodana, you will be entitled most likely to 25% of the license fee for the first year. The licensing, by the way, is based on the amount of contributors. So we basically look on how many people do actively contribute code to the projects that you want to cover Qodana, and that is what our licensing is based on. We do not care about lines of code, a number of projects, or anything like that. We are really based on the amount of active contributors, as we think that you get the value from a static analysis tool where you add or change code. And the fairest reflection of that would be to count the contributors who are changing or adding that code. And here again, we would be super happy to share your feedback. Good is very welcome, bad is very welcome, medium is very welcome as well. And I know that our community leader, she also rustled up some spot prices. So if you go and take this questionnaire, and it's really just a very short one, you will be picked, and you might get some nice JetBrains swag as thank you for doing this. And that was about it. So we have 3 minutes left. Alex, any more questions?
Yes, actually, there are questions. First one being, is it integrated into CLion?
Yes and no. CLion is, I think, one of the two IDEs where you would have to download the plugin manually. But Alex, please correct me.
Yes, you can use it in CLion now. That's
Yeah.
a new feature. Next question: how long does an analysis run usually for a decently sized project?
Here again, unfortunately, I need to give you a very fuzzy answer. The answer would be it depends, because for static analysis, and that's not only in Qodana, that is with basically all these static analysis tools, it really depends on the state your code is in. So how easy it is to pass, how many issues are in there. So it can be anything from a couple of seconds in the best case to half an hour if it is really big for the first one. However, we have a couple of items, like, for example, caching, that really should help to speed things up. Plus, you can also run Qodana in PR mode, so meaning that will only scan the changed files, which will also help to speed up things considerably. We also have a free trial, by the way, 60 days. So that's always probably the best way with static analysis tools, to take one project that you know really well and just put Qodana through its paces to see what it does, what it finds, and how long it takes.
Fantastic. That is it for the questions.
Perfect. I think that is it. I know we have 40 seconds left. Sorry, I'm very German when it comes to timekeeping. But again, I really appreciate it. I hope it helped a little bit. We would be more than happy to get in touch with you. You will see the ways how to get in touch with us when we share the presentation. And yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate that you took your time to listen to me banging on about Qodana for an hour. But we really want to see into what we can do to help to make your life a little bit easier, a little bit safer with Qodana. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.